that there was once an old man, and he said the old man was standing at the bottom of a mountain with a spoon, and he was digging in the mountain, and he was, basically moving the mountain with a spoon like the spoon was a shovel, and they called him a foolish old man. And then another man came who they called a wise man, asked him, "What are you doing?" And the foolish old man said, I'm moving this mountain." And the other man laughed at him. He said, "You can't move that mountain with a spoon." So he walked on his way giggling at the foolish man who was sitting there with the spoon trying to move the mountain. Days, weeks, and weeks had passed. He come by and he saw that the man had built him a little mound now. And he looked and he said, "Man, he might be making some progress." The people of the city saw this, and moved by this, they jumped in it. They grabbed their spoons and started participating in trying to move the mountain. His kids, once they got old enough, they came out and they grabbed their spoons and they started moving the mountain. Now you got all the people participating in the moving of the mountain. Now you have the mountain being moved. And Huey said that in the story, he says that God himself looked down on it and had so much compassion for them putting in the work of moving the mountain that he took the mountain and moved the mountain. And he would say that's revolutionary suicide, because the revolutionary has to be a fool. The revolutionary has to be someone who is willing to try to do what other people say is impossible.
If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
Panther
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing
I'm
to
talking
die
about
for.
tribal self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those get on board.
Peace and power. Once again, this is the Panther 48. Today we have a special show with a few special guests that I think is going to make the show interesting. Today's subject matter is Huey P. Newton. Genius or madman? Revolutionary suicide or reactionary suicide? This is what we're going to discuss today. And today on the panel, the special guest that we have, Black again, we have Brother Magnetic Allah calling out of Washington State. Brother Magnetic Allah is the Minister of Culture of the Washington State chapter of the New Black Panther Party. He's also what we call in the Panther community a Panther Cub. So the brother was born a Panther. His father was once a member of the NOI, who left the NOI and became a member of the Black Panther Party. So the brother essentially grew up with Panther culture around him. Brother Magnetic, peace and power.
Peace, Black Power refinement to the family. How's everybody?
Would you like to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, a little quick background?
Sure, family. Born and raised in Seattle. I've moved all around through the 16 Black Meccas, so might not be the typical, Black Seattle dude. You know what I mean? But like the brother said, I grew up in the party. Was very involved as far as bringing hip hop to the West Coast and to the Northwest. Still involved with that. Father of hip hop soul. In Seattle. What we did though, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna pass the build. We wanted to bring the consciousness into the hip hop movement as much as possible without quantifying it, making it fly, but at the same time making it something that's substantive, and that was one of the, the contributions of what we call Dread Eye Movement. And I will pass the mic.
We appreciate that, brother.
Yes,
also,
sir.
we have another Panther Cub on the show with us today, Black again. I always love to have this brother on the show, Brother Yangi Nkrumah. He's the national chairman of the People's Black Panther Party out of Atlanta. He's as I said before, he's also a Panther Cub, a former member of the New Black Panther Party. And I'm gonna just pass the mic to the brother and let the brother tell you a little bit about himself, give you a little quick breakdown of his background. Peace and power, Brother Yangi.
Peace and power. All powers to the people, African power to an African people, and Black power, man, thank you. And like I said, thank you for having me again. I think, if people frequent the show, if they watch it regularly, which we all should, then they kind of know me, and a few people are familiar with me. But for those who aren't, I am Yang and Nkrumah, coming out of Cleveland. My father is Imam brother, Chairman Abdul Kahar, formerly Ben Simmons of the Louisville Seven, seven Panther brothers that were accused of robbing the Kentucky Derby, the whole nine. So, like the brother, he and I share a similar background. Of coming up in the culture, in the Panther culture. Let me say this though before I end about the People's Black Panther Party, not to be confused with the People's New Black Panther Party, chaired by dear brother Yakanan, National Chairman Yakanan. Not to be mistaken for that. We are the People's Black Panther Party for self-determination. And I think that if anything, I'm ending on this about the Panther Party on that note. I think one of the distinctions is, we hear a lot of people say, oh, we're like the original, we're like the original. Yes, in structure and spirit, but we've assessed the situation and we are just audacious enough, not insulting, but just audacious enough to say, hey, this is why I think this is a great show. This is where we believe the originals may have taken a misstep, so-called originals, call them the third development. Third development may have taken a misstep. And should we back to this or correct this, then maybe we will see the advancement, the progression. Also, in conclusion, I am also the Chief Operating Officer, COO of Journey Black Foundation. I know that there can be no revolution without addressing the day-to-day dialectics of the people. And this is what the Journey Black Foundation is about, addressing the day-to-day mathematics, problems, issues, conflicts, whatever we have in our going about conducting our business. And this is about how to do that in a resistance, rebellious form with an being African identity centered, with the hopes of that it will blossom and begin to create a pool that we can begin to see and pull people out of to cultivate into a revolutionary personality type. And with that, man, all power to the people.
Peace, appreciate it, brother. All power to the people. Peace and blessings. Also, we have another special guest that we have on. We have brother Nehemiah X. The brother is a member of the New Black Panther Party. He's a Minister of Information of the East Regional coming out of Georgia. Peace and power, Nehemiah. And can you tell the people something about yourself?
Peace, Black Power Refinement. I'm just a young brother with my eyes on the prize, seizing the time and holding the line.
Already. Now this guy needs he needs no introduction. I'm gonna introduce him anyway. This brother needs no introduction. We call him the Black Joker. This is my brother and yours, Brother E. Brother E is one of the founding members of the NANM, New African Nationalist Movement, and he was a day one member of the New Black Panther Party Dallas chapter. He's a former Minister of Information of the New Black Panther Party Dallas chapter, and he's our Minister of Information Emeritus of the Panther 48. Peace and power, Brother E. And second to last, I was going to say last but not least, but I guess I'm last. Second to last, we have Brother Robert Wall Williams, who is the current chairman of the San Diego chapter of the Black Panther Party, former chairman of the New Black Panther Party Dallas chapter. He's the national chief of staff of the People's Black Panther Party, headquartered out of Atlanta, and chaired by Brother Yang and Nkrumah, Brother Ward. He's also our chairman emeritus of the Panther 48. Brother Ward, tell the people something about yourself.
All the people, folks. Let's get it on. Y'all done heard a little bit about me in previous videos, and if you hadn't, please go back and watch some of our videos. The idea here is that when we want to build on a subject matter, we want you to also look at something we've said in the past to help bring more light to that and use that to keep building.
True indeed. And me, myself, which one of the hardest things to do is to introduce yourself and not sound arrogant at the same time. But I'm your big brother, Syke, former chief of staff for the Dallas chapter, New Black Panther Party, founder of the Uhuru Shule Manhood Training Course, and chief of staff emeritus of the Panther 48. Peace and power. Today, we're going to have an off-the-cuff chat. Today, we're going to talk about Huey P. Newton. If you don't know who Huey P. Newton is, I would be shocked that you're even on this channel watching this, because Huey P. Newton is considered one of the fathers of Pantherism. He's And the third development, the development of the Panther Party that everybody knows so well. Think about it like this. This is something to think about. When we think about the invention of gangster rap, everybody usually, unless you're really a hip hop student, thinks of NWA. You think NWA, Ice Cube, not realizing that Ice T did gangster rap before NWA did. Not realizing, I think it was Schoolie D may be considered the first gangster rapper coming out of New York, but it was NWA that popularized gangster rap. So they get the reputation and the respect for being the founders. It's the same thing with Huey and Bobby. They popularized the Panther movement. That version of the Panther movement got the most popularity. So that's the version they get that everybody thinks of when they think of the Panther Party. Huey was considered to be the idealist of that movement. Fred Hampton, Bobby Seale, Eldridge Cleaver, many of those would always credit Huey with the ideals for Panther ideology. But Huey couldn't speak. He wasn't a great speaker. He wasn't like Malcolm. He wasn't like Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. He wasn't like them. Huey was a thinker, so he could sit down, talk, write these ideas, and then people like Bobby or Eldridge or any of these would go out and they would speak these ideas. One of the main ideas that Huey, and he wrote a book of this name, and I'm just opening this up for the discussion so we can go on and get in there. He wrote a book and he purported this idea called revolutionary suicide. Revolutionary suicide, according to Huey, was this. He said that many people say that the members of the party, is suicidal because we're doing things that we know is dangerous and that will bring the full force of the government down on us. He said that so people are saying we're suicidal. He said, but we know that what we're doing is dangerous. We understand that the full power of the government will come down on us for the things that we're doing. However, we refuse to live comfortable without freedom. So we're willing to take those chances, knowing that we'll die. But we feel that dying for freedom is far better than dying of a natural cause, never having freedom. He called that revolutionary suicide. When you're fighting for your freedom, knowing that it may cost your life, but you accept that it's much better to die for your freedom than to live without your freedom, that's revolutionary suicide. Huey said it, and you probably heard Pac and thought Pac said it, but Huey is the one that made this quote famous. He said that everybody's gonna die. Don't die 1,000 times worrying about it. That's revolutionary suicide. And then he compared that to reactionary, or he contrasted it to reactionary suicide. Reactionary suicide is when the problems of life get so bad you can't take it anymore. You take a gun and blow your brains out, or you go and you jump over a bridge, or you go and get yourself addicted to some kind of drug and you die drug contaminated. That's reactionary suicide. So Huey talked about both of these ideas and these concepts: reactionary suicide and revolutionary suicide. Today's discussion, or the question that we're asking, and the people that watch this later after we post this on on YouTube, we want you to get in the comments and tell us, what do you think? Was Huey P. Newton a revolutionary genius or a madman? Was he a revolutionary or a gangster? Did Huey P. Newton commit revolutionary suicide or reactionary suicide? The floor is open and the mics are hot, gentlemen. Who want to get in there?
Well, let me say this, jumping in, just another one of his quotes here. My fear was not of death itself, but death without meaning. So Huey talked about that from the stance of saying that, and if you talk about it from, like you said, with revolutionary suicide, his position was that you have to stand for something. And people that don't stand for something in their life, especially when you talk about the condition of us as Black people, are doomed by the oppressor and the ways of the oppressor. So one of the things that I love that Huey used to went toward emphasizing was that the people have to be, their consciousness have to be raised. And that was the biggest thing, is how do you go about doing that? And I think when we look at this and we talk about what Huey and Bobby initially set out to do, when, remember, they was initially called the Sons of Malcolm, and then they referred to themselves as the ideological heirs of Malcolm X, and then they went on to do the work in the community in terms of saying that we have to do for self. And so therefore we're going to show and live by the example that we as a people have what we need to be able to put ourselves in the positions of power. We just need to learn how to all come together and do so. So in exemplifying that stance, it was about showing the people that you have to live for something. And in living for something, especially something that's gonna counter the status quo, something that's gonna counter the oppressor being in a position to be able to constantly oppress you, is gonna put you in a position of a suicidal act. So it was all about having intention in your life. And so when I think about the genius of Huey, it basically has to do with recognizing that we do have a power, and not allowing yourselves to be victimized to the point to where you don't operate within that framework of collective empowerment. So I just wanted to start in with that.
Peace, family. So for a long time, I loved revolutionary culture, and I still love elements and aspects of it because it gives you a good picture of the time, you know, what was going on and the sentiment of a lot of the people. Okay. But that was all that I had. But the more that I learned about revolutionary culture, you know, true revolutionary culture, you know, and I started going to Nkrumah's teaching, Sekou Touré's teaching, you know, Patrice Lumumba's, you know, things that was going on the continent. When I started to study Robert F. Williams, and I really started to see revolutionary culture and how revolutionaries live day to day and whatnot, then I said, well, I guess if you don't never really learn revolutionary culture, you have no choice but to die of revolutionary suicide because you never learn how to live as a revolutionary. So you could only die, you know, or yeah, you know, so I don't know if those options, you know, the cultural part was there for him or if he just rejected it. You know what I mean? Because I could see what happened at a certain point. They drove a wedge in between people like the nation, right? The Black nationalists, and I would say the more Black power groups because of what happened between Malcolm and the nation. So then it drove a lot of people away from nationalism. Then subsequently, you have what happened at I think it was at UCLA between was it United Slaves and Bunchy and them. So then that pushed a further wedge in between the Black nationalism. I mean, but we got to think about this kind of Black nationalism. This wasn't just traditional Black. This was Black nationalism that took people that was alcoholic, everyday drink alcoholics, to not drinking at all and being productive people. That took cocaine heads and heroin people off of heroin and stuff and out of recidivism and made them productive. So this is a pretty thorough form of nationalism. However, at a certain point, because of what happened, they threw it out the window. So he was not able to reform himself in the same way. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean when I say revolutionary culture. I don't mean accepting necessarily all of it, but the part that can make you into a better man, that made Malcolm into a better man, that made Elijah into a better man, that made Khaled into even a better man. And he was an A student. Wow. That's something there, you know? And I don't know if everybody was embracing that, you know, that aspect. So you have no choice but to die of revolutionary suicide because you did not embrace the revolutionary, or maybe you didn't have access to it. So yeah.
Well, build on that just a real quick section and say, so you're talking about the difference between revolutionary suicide and revolutionary living. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
You said, what was the second one you said? Revolutionary what, family?
Revolutionary living, revolutionary suicide. Because one is talking about an act of dying. The other one is an act of living, but it's revolution in terms of both.
Indeed. And when I mean, it's kind of it's a conundrum. It's a funny term because revolution in itself is a circle and the circle represents life. So for you to say revolutionary suicide is like, even if I say the word spirit, you're looking at spiral, which is a circle. So it's just life, you know what I mean? So it's like then when you say civil war, how can you have a civil war? If you're civilized, you don't, right? There's certain words that kind of cancel each other out. So when they say revolutionary suicide, I'm like, bruh, revolution to me is life. Because without this revolution, literally, my parents would not have met. You see what I'm saying?
I think he's speaking to, like, I think, you know, when he says that, he's speaking to more of a normalcy, what people would have called a normalcy. Like when you commit to the revolutionary way of life, especially in that time, and how they were interpreting it, then you give up on basically being a part of the system. You know what I'm saying? That's the system. So they were building outside the system, they face the challenges of building outside the system a system in itself.
Indeed.
And we see to a certain degree, it won. That revolutionary suicide paid off. His giving up on being aided by the system. And this isn't the first time that we hear about something like this concept. And I'm gonna quote somebody, Hitler in his Mein Kampf. He talks about, when he was locked up, he wrote this treatise, he wrote this book, Mein Kampf, on how he would take over and implement it step by step. And one of the things he said is he would have to kill the ministers that were close to him because they were paid by the state. And so they had how far in their revolution would they go? You're talking about their meal ticket. So this is it doesn't surprise me that this type of understanding came to Huey, especially being on, and I'm not going to be long-winded, you look at 66, they were on the brink of, when did they sign the Civil Rights Act into like 64, 65? So he was right there to witness the apex of reformism, the apex of integration, the apex of if America lets us in, if America lets us in. He was there to see, burn, 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 and on the heels of like the speaking of Malcolm, the teachings of Malcolm, what Malcolm gave the revolutionary movement, Malcolm took, here's where I don't know what you mean by Black nationalism. I like to hear more of that, because I think that we still remain Black nationalists, even outside of the Nation of Islam. What Malcolm did was politicize it. Malcolm, in his organization of African unity.
That's what I was saying, fam. Pardon me. There's a reform element that was in it, and that's why it's a little different than a lot of other Black nationalism. But I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, family.
Yeah, absolutely. The moral and the ethical thing, and I think that he gave us a blueprint for that, because this is why I say he was genius. Also, he gave us how to incorporate the masses with the Organization of African American Unity. It's not religious. It's non-secular. It's secular. If you Black. And then he had those brothers that practice a faith as he did and understood morals and ethics the way he did, Muslim Mosque Incorporated. So he showed us the infusion. We see him inspired by the James Cone with Black Christian nationalism, the Black Panther. So you see from this brilliant tree, many seeds sprout. So to go to Huey, so Huey's on the cusp of this, and already having a blueprint of, like we talked about, the developments, Loudoun County, New York, of Black Panthers. He was just like prime. I think he was both, and I'm going to conclude with this. I think he was both. I think he was absolutely mad, but a lot, you find true genius. A lot of times when you look at them, they are, if they're not at least eclectic, they mad as hell. They really like the Mad Hatter, but there's a brilliance that resides in all of that whatever.
Let me jump in there. I want to build on what Magnetic had just said, and to clarify this. Now, revolutionary suicide. When Huey, in the book, he talks about this concept. He says that there was once an old man, and he said the old man was standing at the bottom of a mountain with a spoon, and he was digging in the mountain, and he was, basically moving the mountain with a spoon, like the spoon was a shovel. And they called him a foolish old man. And then another man came who they called a wise man, asking, "What are you doing?" And the foolish old man said, I'm moving this mountain. And the other man laughed at him. He said, you can't move that mountain with a spoon. So he walked on his way giggling at the foolish man who was sitting there with the spoon trying to move the mountain. Days, weeks and weeks had passed. He come by and he saw that the man had built him a little small mound now. And he looked and he said, man, he might be making some progress. The people of the city saw this, and moved by this, they jumped in it. They grabbed their spoons and started participating in trying to move the mountain. His kids, once they got old enough, they came out and they grabbed their spoons and they started moving the mountain. Now you got all the people participating in the moving of the mountain. Now you have the mountain being moved. And Huey said that in the story, he says that God himself looked down on it and had so much compassion for them putting in the work of moving the mountain that he took the mountain and moved the mountain. And he would say that's revolutionary suicide, because the revolutionary has to be a fool The revolutionary has to be someone who is willing to try to do what other people say is impossible. It is impossible to move this mountain of oppression. It's impossible to stop these people from putting their boots on our neck. That's revolutionary suicide. Huey expressed that in order to become a Panther, you have to accept that death is inevitable. And if you cannot accept death is inevitable, then you cannot operate as a Panther, because the things that you are doing and saying are dangerous. We've even had people say, jump in our comments and say, what's wrong with y'all? Why are y'all putting this stuff out on a public forum? Well, that's revolutionary suicide. We understand that publicly showing our face, publicly saying things like this can bring a backlash. Revolutionary suicide is, I don't care. It ain't that I don't want to, it ain't that I want to die. I'm looking for somebody to kill me, but I'm willing to go through the process of sacrifice if that will wake others up, if that would help us move the mountain. That's what he meant by revolutionary suicide. Not that we want to die. Now, on the flip side of that, I think that Huey did not have what we have, meaning that we have Huey to look at. We have Malcolm to look at. We have our forefathers and our ancestors and our past to look at to see the mistakes they made. Huey didn't have that. So Huey was big. Well, he had that to a degree, but he didn't have it to the degree that we have it. So even though he knew the ideas, and I know all of y'all on the panel have went through this at some point in time in your life, you reading and you studying ideas. I remember feeling like this when we went to Jasper. I was reading ideas, I was studying the ideas, but the ideas didn't become real. I didn't realize they didn't become real in my mind until I actually experienced the power that Black men marching in black with knowledge of the law would have if they moved together in unity. We had power when we moved through Jasper. I read about unity and the power of unity. I thought I believed in it, but I really started believing in it when I had the experience in Jasper. I really knew it was real. It became real to me. And I think that's what happened to Huey. So he also is a perfect example of reactionary suicide, because I think that what took place with Huey and everything that Huey was going through is that Huey started going insane a little bit. I think that he started losing his mind. Can you imagine how stressful being in that position would be? You have the United States government, the CIA, the FBI. You have these different factions coming after you and playing with your head. They'll man, Brother E, you can't trust Brother E. Brother E is an informant. I just saw him down there. You have this going on. And so now you don't know who you can trust. You don't know who you can believe in. Then you have so many real informants in the party. You have so many, back then they called it the Black Pro or the Black Program, where they had, you had informants on the local level that was part of the local police informants. You had informants on the national level who was FBI informants. You had undercover agents in the port. You had all of these elements going at Huey. And I think toward the end, the stress became too much for Huey, and he broke from it. And that's what led into his drug abuse. Now, let me say this, and then I'm gonna open the floor back up. Now, there is a big difference between, even though all of this birthed from the same, because we're all the same people. We're all Black. We're all people of African descent, unapologetically. However, there are many different movements and many different ideologies that came out of that. There's a difference between the Nation of Islam's ideology and the Black Panther Party's ideology for certain reasons. The Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale called themselves the ideological heirs of Malcolm X. But the problem with that, what they did, and I ain't even gonna call it a problem, they took the certain political points that Malcolm made, that Malcolm in the later years, when Malcolm wasn't speaking the religious concepts, when he was speaking the political ideas, they took that. If you think about it, look at Malcolm's speeches. Malcolm said we should form gun clubs and put these gun clubs in the Black community, and where the police are unwilling or simply can't defend us, we'll defend ourselves.
Call for rifle clubs, that I think Negroes should, in areas where the police, whether it be federal, state, or city, have proven their inability or their unwillingness to defend Negroes, the lives and the property of Negroes, then it's only intelligent and it's only right that Negroes protect themselves. And I have encouraged them to buy a rifle and a shotgun, which according to the Constitution is legal.
For what?
Not buy a pistol or something like that, but a rifle or a shotgun, which is constitutionally legal.
For what purpose?
So that at any time anyone makes any effort whatsoever to brutalize them or attack them or endanger them, they should have something to defend themselves.
That's what the Black Panther Party did. They took all of those ideas. Malcolm started, if you look at his later speeches, if you look at his last speeches, Malcolm was talking about revolution. There's a worldwide revolution going on, and revolutions are bloody. Name somewhere on the planet where a revolution was not bloody. Look at those ideas. Those are the ideas that Huey and them built on. Huey and them heard the word revolution. What is that? I don't know what that is. Let me go look it up. Who said revolution? Che Guevara. Who else said revolution? Mao Zedong. Let me study these guys so I can understand what revolution is, because the big brother Malcolm said this is what we need to be on. Brother said we're in a worldwide revolution. They took those ideas of Malcolm. Then you had, as the brother talked about earlier, the U.S., the United Slaves Organization, who took another aspect of Malcolm. They took the cultural aspects of Malcolm that Malcolm was getting from people like John Henry Clark, when Malcolm was saying things like, what did we leave in Africa? Why you left your mind in Africa? He said we need to get into Pan-Africanism the way the Jew is into pan-Jewry. We need to understand who we are as a worldwide people. Malcolm started preaching and teaching those ideas. So those particular sets took those ideas. And all of those ideas were beautiful. All of them was great. But certain people took, just like, and we see this in the Panther formations now. Certain people took the things they liked and they ran and went with them. Certain people liked the guns and the black uniforms. They put on the black rider guns and took off that way, without the political ideology, without the studies. You know, people like Brother E, and I was there with Brother E back in those days. People like Brother E caught hell in the Panther Party because he stressed studying. He was out of his damn mind because he believed black men should study and learn. So he caught hell from that. You know what I'm saying? Yes, he caught hell, but just to make my point, and I'm open the flow back up. Anybody want to get in there?
Man, Huey. Point taken, sir. Point taken. Point taken. Absorbed. Observed. I think, but the only way we can really discuss this, properly is if we put into context. I say COINTELPRO point number 2, which says they wanted to prevent the rise of a black messiah, and they named specifically the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and then Kwame Ture. He was Stokely Carmichael at the time. So, they're looking for a replacement to move this guy out the way and find another viable replacement who the people could vibe with. Huey just happened to become that person. You know what I mean? So he was rushed from being a student into leadership. You know what I mean? And because he was sincere, he did it. But he kind of got rushed. The same, if you look at how Kwame was prepared by Martin Luther King, by Ella Baker, you know what I mean, by SCLC, by the people in SNCC and all of the freedom schools he went to and participated in. The man went to Howard University. So there was a lot of preparation there, man. And then he also had preparation in being able to see the white left and their makings and how their machinations and what they did within SNCC. You know what I mean? He couldn't really see these type of people coming because he wasn't that deep. So, but then let me go to Memorandum 46 from the National Security Council, which once said they wanted to prevent the Black movement and the African movement, Pan-Africanist movement, from coming together. Now, Kwame was on his way to Africa to make that happen, you see. So that's another reason why they wanted to replace Kwame with who would ever fit the white sensationalist media agenda. That happened to be Mr. Huey P. Newton. You know what I mean? I guess a certain way he looked, certain way he talked. Hey, then if you notice, on the heels of him coming out, kind of from turning the nationalist point and turning into more of the gangster, you get what? The black exploitation. So you get people looking like him, the Mac, a light-skinned dude, that look a certain way. Then you got Superfly, which was a dude that looked almost exactly like Huey P. Newton. You know what I mean? So they're doing little psyops, man, to twist the image. You know what I mean? It started out as real strong black power with froze and stuff. Next thing you know, Huey P. Newton got a perm at a certain point, and he's not talking no nationalism, but he is talking revolutionary suicide. And unfortunately, the last time we hear somebody popularly say that in a popular way, is Jim Jones. Right before everybody kills themselves and drinks the Kool-Aid, they say, we're committing revolutionary suicide. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So that left no pun intended, that left a taste of bad Kool-Aid in our mouth, you know? You see what I'm saying? In reference to that term. Now, revolutionary culture, you can try to obscure that, but it's very difficult because we look at how Huey went out, how he passed away. And I salute this man, and I have to look at all the surrounding factors and have pity upon him and thank him so that we did not have to take that road. But he died revolutionary suicide. But then we look at somebody on the opposite coast at the same time in 1970, Dr. Matula Shakur, and he's doing the opposite. He's doing an acupuncture clinic, life, revolutionary culture. You know what I mean? Then took the Lincoln Clinic and flipped it into an acupuncture clinic, the first acupuncture clinic outside of China. They went to China and learned it and then brought it back and started getting people off of heroin and the drugs that our other brother, Huey, began to proliferate. You know what I mean? So it's like you have the two parts. You have a choice, revolutionary culture, you have revolutionary suicide. And we see, I'm not, trying to harshly judge the man because I know he probably didn't intend to end up there. But if you do not find that revolutionary culture to plug in those moments when you're not fighting and shooting and protesting and shit, those low moments, Dr. Bobby Wright talked to us a lot about positive mental health practices, that he talked to the Panthers about and gave to them, but they rejected what he said for Marxism, for socialism, for Trotskyism. You see what I'm saying? And took more listen to them than they did him. You know what I mean? And this brother had stuff that worked because he had the only Black mental health center in the country. So we know it worked, So yeah, man. And this is how I helped myself because I was going through a certain maniacal period. I'm an Aquarius like Huey too. I like to fight too, but I had to find a way to quell that in me, man, and do something with that to where that fight didn't pull me in two pieces, man, pull me apart. So I started boxing, started doing physical fitness. I started working out. I stopped eating certain types of foods. I started meditating more, you know what I mean? And then I found out what I was fighting was something that was in me. You know what I mean? Some fuck shit in me that need to be dealt with. And that's the real battle. That's the real battle. It could tear you apart, or you could use it as a drive, as a vibe, So yeah.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. You made some good points. I wanted to touch on one. I want to start with the Huey. I think that's very important to understand the spirit because you said something that was great and I totally agree with. He was thrust into leadership. Now, why we may disagree on in listening, you make it sound a little more nefarious, like it's a conspiracy theory. I think I liken his being rushed into leadership almost like I was talking to War one time, and he was talking about the effects of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. In fact, they talk about it on one of the shows. Go back and look that up for the viewing audience. And he said that they hadn't trained, Aaron Michaels and all of these guys hadn't trained for the sudden growth from the influence of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. That's what you had with Huey. Huey, when he went in, they weren't as renowned. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have, and one thing Abu, my father, shared with me, he said he don't know, he said he believes wholeheartedly they did something to Huey's head in there. He said he saw the difference when Dr. Huey came home. He was like, he was different.
Whole other person, that's what they said.
Yeah. Whole other person, and you coming home to this, because when he went in, like I said, they didn't have the renown or the infamy, whoever you ask, they don't. And so he came home to almost like godlike status to people who had never, almost like a godlike status.
OG.
So that's
it's already in a gangster kind of place, so we know how that's going to go.
We see the evolution and growth of Huey coming off of the back of what they came off of, the second development. These developments were very Black nationalists, even though it may have not been spelled out or straight out said Black nationalists. His actions, his comments, we understood what the move was.
Yes,
As
sir.
Huey grew, can you hear me?
Yep. There you go.
Okay. As Huey grew, and begin to study, we see Huey move more from a nationalist perspective to a socialist perspective, which would have been cool, is like what you said. You probably, like me, I heard you say, you know, like in Nkrumah, I'm an Nkrumahist myself. You know
Yes,
what I'm
sir.
saying?
Yes,
Be
sir.
an African scientific socialist perspective, but he went straight to a Maoist or Marxist Leninist
Yes, sir.
type of understanding, and then begin to try to bring that to the people. That's why we start to see the actions change, the exception of all, you know,
Right.
it's just a whole lot of hoopla that can be examined and gone into. And I personally feel like, and people I've studied with feel like that in this area was some very big missteps, you know. So we,
And
you
that's
know,
where
we
we
go to
talk
that.
about how it went from black power to the people. You
Right.
see,
So we
you
talk
feel
about
me?
this, right? This Marxist Leninist influence. Now, here's what's
Yeah.
interesting. You talked about Matula Shakur. I didn't want to bring this up, but you can't have a discussion about Huey and not bring this up. See, you like me, my father, when the split came, we was East Coast. So you're saying everything that I believe. You're about, like we said, Matula Shakur, about life, the culture, because when you look at it, the West Coast went so socialist. And so they did, you could tell they was Maoist, because Mao almost destroyed China the same way. He went so socialist, he turned on the nationalists. They destroyed the nationalists. They destroyed the cultural nationalists. He had the great industrial period that raped and pillaged China of all its agricultural resources. That it created a famine that he had to bring back in certain Chinese cultural perceptions and conceptions to pump life back into that monster he was trying to make and killing China in the process. So I say that to say, this is why we see Huey divorcing themselves from some things that in Nkrumahism teach us is innately African, which is spiritualism. You know what I'm saying? Maoist and Lin, that whatever you call God, whatever, but that spiritual ancestors, whatever, spiritualism is innately African, and also an amount of culturalism. That's why another thing I point out, when you look at us on the East Coast that maintain the Pantherism, all our names were African names. They shared their so-called government names or colonialist names or whatever, Matula Shakur, they even so much that on the East Coast, they broke up into clans, the Shakur clan, the Jijaga clan. They would break up into cells and clans. That's why now it's a fad to be a Shakur. But like when I was coming up in early years, to be a Shakur meant something. When I was introduced to a Shakur, instinctively, I'm thinking he's part of that Shakur clan. This is, you know, so the East Coast held on to a lot of the cultural perception, and those are very big differences from where we talk about the West and the East, and what I think contributed largely, or was at least a factor of Huey going mad towards the end, and being so disillusioned and just out of touch with what they started out with, and with the pressures of, this devil is real. This devil is real. I see how they come at my father, they come at me, they come at you, everybody on this line. So he's real with that pressures that he would succumb to the very chemical warfare that was targeted against the very thing that they were fighting, that he would succumb to it. It isn't surprising, and it serves as, I think, in concluding, this is once we begin to be scientific and analytical about our struggle, realistic, man, like hell, even about our heroes and sheroes, that we can do like the Greeks did. They serve as tales of woe. You know, I don't understand this lofty raft a lot of these black folk get on a hit, you know what I'm saying? But no, it's a tale of heroics, triumph, because we did beat the government. Remember, we're talking about, this is a time before food stamps, before WIC, before they acknowledged sickle cell anemia tested. Prison reform, was needed badly, what they did to us in prison. So a lot of, in order to quell this revolution they was fighting, they had to address these social issues. So the government conceded to a degree. So with all of that being said, in concluding, it serves as a tale of courage, heroics, triumph, and a tale of woe and tragedy, and be warned type thing. And I think when we make it applicable like that, we can see the balance of, yeah, he's both. He's brilliant and he's mad as hell.
Let me say this, and then I'm gonna bring E in. He had his hand up, so I think he wanted to come in on something. Both of you brothers said something that grabbed my attention, and y'all are right. Y'all are absolutely right. I agree with y'all. People probably didn't heard me say before, I love Huey for the ideas, for his ideology. But he's definitely a tale of woe. And one of the things that I've always disagreed with, and it was a fight that E and I had even back in the 90s. We had this fight in the late 90s in the Dallas chapter. We were trying to bring back that African-centered teaching. We believed that point number 5 in the platform, where it says that we want an education that teaches us our true self and our enemies and our proper. I can't remember it verbatim right now, but y'all know what it says. And we thought that was speaking, and can't nobody convince me that it's not. Because if you're going to teach me a true education of who I am as a person, knowledge of self, then you have to talk about where we come from and the culture that we originally practiced. You have to deal with that. And so we was trying to bring that into the party, and we met resistance. We had a few fights, until we finally wore some of the brothers down. And so one of the things that E and I always said back then was that Huey and them made a mistake because they veered from that African understanding. We always said that if you're serious about revolution and you're trying to restart evolution, if you're trying to bring back the culture and remove this oppression, then you have to know it's one thing to know what you're removing, but it's a whole different thing to know what you're replacing it with. And if you don't have anything to replace it with other than the very thing that you've been raised, educated, and taught up under, then all you're going to do is fight one oppressor with one skin color to replace them with another oppressor with a different skin color, but the same oppressive system. It's almost like the machines on the Terminator then figured out the code, and it came all the way back around and then tricked us to recreate Skynet. The machines them tricked us into creating the AI. They done fooled us into that. But
and that would be revolutionary suicide, brother. What you just explained, right?
Now I wanted to go to that. I
itself.
wanted to go to that. I don't think Huey died of revolutionary suicide, though. I think Huey died of reactionary suicide. When you look at the definition and the way it expresses itself, Malcolm X died of revolutionary suicide. Martin Luther King died of revolutionary suicide. These men died simply for what they stood for. That's a revolutionary suicide. Huey died a reactionary suicide because he didn't die for what he stood for. Huey died for the very things that he was against. In the book Spirit of a Panther by David Hilliard, in this book right here, at the very end of the book, and I'm going to be honest, when I first read this book, at the end of the book, the way David Hilliard broke this down, I almost brought tears to my eyes. Because he'll tell you the story of Huey and how bold Huey is. Everybody has seen the movie. Y'all remember when he said, I remember back in the day when we was younger, I think E tried to play this scene in the movie out. He loved to go snatch that pump shotgun out of the trunk of the car. He was even driving a black VW Bug back then, trying to be Huey P. Newton. He loved to snatch that shotgun out of the car and stand and post up at the Weaves Chicken with the shotgun, trying to look like Huey. And he light skinned anyway. But back to the point. So Huey, he had that gun, and they said, "Is that gun loaded, boy?" And he hit it. Well, I tell you, sir, it wasn't, but now it is.
Is that gun loaded, boy?
Fish and game law clearly states it's unlawful to carry a live round of ammunition in the chamber of a shotgun or rifle in a vehicle. Pig.
Refer to him as officer. Then don't you refer to him as boy.
Well, is it loaded?
I tell you, officer, it wasn't, but now it is.
There's a badass nigga. Now for the last.
Huey was bold. He wasn't afraid of the police. At the end of this book, David Hilliard talked about, he said Huey he heard a beat on his door. He said he went to the door and opened the door. He said it was Huey P. Newton. He said he fell into his apartment, fell on the ground. He said, hide me. The pigs after me. David Hilliard said I was humiliated. He said, Huey P. Newton running from the pigs? He said, I was dishonored. He said, right then I knew it was time for me to get clean because he was on drugs too. David Hilliard was on drugs and Huey was on drugs. Think about that. In the beginning, Huey was bold. He wasn't afraid of the pigs. But at the end, when he wasn't doing the right thing, when he wasn't standing on righteousness, he was running and hiding from the pigs. When he was standing on righteousness, there was nothing to run from. He believed in revolutionary suicide. But at the end, he wasn't the same Huey P. Newton. He was running. David Hillier said he was dirty. He had dirt under his fingernails, and he was afraid. But when I read that, I'm talking about I felt that. I literally felt that. That's why I say he didn't die of revolutionary suicide. Huey died of reactionary suicide. Another thing is Huey did go after the gangsters. That was the plan from the jump. When they started the Black Panther Party for self-defense in Oakland, California, in October the 15th, 1966, his goal was to go after the street dudes. And this is what Bobby said. Bobby said, and that's what they called it, the genius of Huey P. Newton. He said, he told Bobby said Huey told him, man, we're gonna put on the black leather jackets. He said, we're gonna march through the streets, we're gonna have our guns out. He said, what is the media gonna do? The media gonna say, look at those thugs, look at those gangsters. He said, but that's not gonna scare the average dude in the streets, because all they do is grow up around the thugs and the gangsters. But what they're gonna say is they're gonna say, man, those are some out of sight thugs. Those are some out of sight gangsters. Let's go over there and see what they doing. That was Huey's whole goal, his whole idea. Then he had the idea, this is what they mean by the genius of Huey P. Newton. Then he had the idea, once we get the masses' attention, the street dudes' attention like that, he said, then we politicize the street gangs. We don't try to turn them necessarily into Black Panthers, but we show them how to turn their communities we have them understand that they've been colonized, that the police are forced outside of the community to run the community, that the economics is being ran by the community from a force outside of the community. We teach them how to organize themselves and how to politicize their own communities. And if you look at it, Bloods and Crips, why not started by the Black Panther Party, was influenced by the Black Panther Party. And the movements, even the the Crips came first. Even the blue came from the fact that the first Panther t-shirts was blue. They was powder blue. It was a mistake because they meant to order black shirts, but they ordered blue. And when they got the blue, they were like, oh man, we got these blue shirts. Then they said, what are we gonna do with this? Well, let's say the blue stand for the pain of the people. All right, they wore the blue shirts. And when they started the Crip organization, I forget the brother's name who decided that the color would be blue, because it wasn't Raymond Washington Tookie, but it was another brother that used, I think his name was Buddha or something, I believe. Say again?
Kunjufu wrote the Constitution. Yeah, it might have been Buddha said the blue.
Yeah, because he always wore him a blue rag. Yeah. And that came from the fact that they always saw
also
the
Raymond Washington
powder blue t-shirts. Huh?
Yeah, Raymond Washington too. He was a great influencer on the Crip.
Well, Raymond Washington grew up watching people like Bunchy Carter. He came from the same neighborhood. At the time, Bunchy Carter's street gang organization was the biggest street gang in California. It was the Slauson Street Gang. Wasn't no Crips, wasn't no Bloods. It was the Slauson Street Gang. He was called a mayor of the ghetto. And Raymond Washington grew up watching this guy. And many of those ideas that he got for starting or creating the Crips came from him watching the Panthers. And you can see the same thing in Chicago. While you will see that the People's Nation is older than the Panther Party, but you will see the Panther influence on the People's Nation and on the Folks Nation there in Chicago, because Fred Hampton took that idea, because Huey said, we need to politicize the street gangs. These are the real soldiers. These are going to be the soldiers. So Fred Hampton hit the streets and started trying to politicize the street gangs. He believed in it 100%. I'm going to read just a little something from Fred Hampton. He said this. Fred said, we got to talk first of all about the main man in the Black Panther Party, the main man in the struggle today in the United States, in Chicago, in Cuba, anywhere else. The main man in the liberation struggle is our Minister of Defense, and yours too, Huey P. Newton. He's the main man because the head of the imperialist octopus lies right here in this country, and whoever is dealing with the head of the octopus in this country is the main man. He's in jail now. We must tell the world that Huey P. Newton was tried by the pigs and they found him guilty. He was tried by the people. We found him not guilty. And we say, let him go. Let him free because we find him not guilty. This is the relentless demand. We would not let up one day. We would not give up the struggle to liberate our Minister of Defense, Huey P. Newton, and we will continue to exert pressure on the power structure and constantly bombard them with the people's demand that Huey P. Newton be set free. It was Huey P. Newton who taught us how the people learn. You learn by participation. When Huey P. Newton started out, what did he do? He got a gun. He got Bobby, and Bobby got a gun. They had a problem in the community because the people were being run over. Kids were being run over at a certain intersection. What did the people do? The people went down to the government to redress their grievances, and the government told them, go to hell. We are not going to put a stoplight down there until we see fit. What did Huey P. Newton do? Did he go out and tell the people about the laws and write letters and try to propagandize them all the time? No. Some of that's good, but the mass of the people don't read. That's what I heard Huey say. They learned through observation and participation. Did he just say this? No. So what did he do? He got him a shotgun. He got Bobby, and he got him a hammer, and he went down to the corner. He gave Bobby the shotgun, and he told him, if any pig in Memphis come down here, I want you to blow his motherfucking brains out. See, that's the influence that Huey had on the party and on the members of the party. So I agree 100%, except I changed the word. I don't think he died of revolutionary suicide. Huey died of reactionary suicide because he reacted to the stress instead of responding to it. He didn't respond to the stress the way a revolutionary would. He reacted to the stress, and his revolutionary ideas didn't hold up for him. But and I agree that the mistake was not being grounded in our culture. And we still find that. We still got that problem. You will not be hard pressed to go city to city to different Panther chapters trying to tell them that we African and not have a fight about that. Because we've been so programmed to hate being who we are that if you tell a brother he African, it's almost like cursing him out. I heard Dr. Khalid say one time, I heard him say this a few times actually. He said, we so confused, we don't know who the hell we are. You got one group saying I'm black. You got one group saying I'm Afro-American. You got one group saying I'm African-American. You got another group saying, man, I don't care about none of that. I'm just a nigga. So we don't know who the hell we are because we've been so divorced and separated from our culture and our people. Go ahead, brother. You had your hand up unless I talked too long and made you forget what you wanted to talk about. Look at E. He's useless. All right. All right. Walt, you got something on your mind, Walt?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of panther back on the idea that when I think about Huey, and then I'll let you jump in, Nehemiah. When I think about Huey, I think about the fact that he was entrenched in the philosophy and the lifestyle of philosophy, and that's where a lot of the Marxist Leninist part come in. Whereas going into the attack, and by being in San Diego, where we dealt with the blunt of what happened between the Panthers and us organization, we know for certain, for a fact, that it was a program, an operation ran to split the concept of the identity of the Panther and the identity of African people, to separate that from the work in the community. And so what ended up happening as a result of that operation is there was literally a split here on the West Coast, to where cats got turned off on dealing with cultural aspects of what it means to be organized. They literally got turned off on that. And so the focus started becoming more philosophical, and it was all about helping the people and helping the people so that they are in a position of doing for self. The thing that we run into with that is that not enough emphasis and not enough recognition was placed on the psychology of the people. Because I think what Huey spoke to is Huey spoke to the folks that were already damaged. And so I think that's why revolutionary suicide resonated with the community, because we're talking about him primarily focusing in on the people that saw themselves as victims. If I see myself as a victim and I'm an element of the streets, then the mentality is, hey, you are being very suicidal in the way you live your life. Why not channel that energy, that same suicidal energy, to doing something suicidal with a purpose, with an intent? And I think that's why I kind of emphasize the word of intent in there. And so speaking to that people that already lived a certain lifestyle and was already leaning toward a certain lifestyle, it's easier to redirect that energy than it is to talk about somebody that may be a studious person and getting them to come up out of the college life, come up out of the even though he was dealing with college people in the beginning, but someone to come up out of a career based lifestyle and headed in that direction to want to commit their lives to the struggle and commit their lives, put their lives on the line, than it was to somebody that's already got their life on the line, that's already in the mentality of the shadow, living in the shadow of death. See, if you're dealing with somebody that's already in the shadow of death, it's a whole lot easier to get them to identify with a purpose than it is for somebody who done already figured they got value in their life and want to live a life, and then tell them, hey, you got to be willing to let all this white picket fence and all of this other stuff that you trying to get in terms of your economic accolades alone and apply that toward the revolution. And even we face the same problem today, is that most of the people that are studious and that are career based want to ride out with capitalism, ride out with the imperialism. But our folks that are in the streets, they can resonate better with the message of the Panther. The problem we run into is the discipline. And to me, that's where the psychology comes in. And I always refer to things in terms of the 3 Ps. That's philosophy, psychology, and physics. We have to have those 3 Ps all wrapped in together. Because when you talk about the physics of it, you're basically talking about how the conservation of energy, and then we also wrap that into when we talk about the Muntu science or the Muntu arts or martial arts, which is what other people call it, in addressing how we do discipline our temple and how we do operate within a certain residence that has us to recognize how laws are natural laws, not governmental laws, but natural laws. And the natural laws goes into the element of health. So from that standpoint, like I tell people here in San Diego, when we talk about diet, the word diet basically means what you take in, whether that be mental, physical, spiritual, psychological. That is what a diet means. But it has been recodified to basically mean that I am doing a certain type of eating. So a lot of times you hear people say, well, I'm on a diet. That means that all of a sudden they're going to eat healthy. Whereas everything you do is a diet. What you take in mentally, physically, and spiritually, everything you take in is your diet. So from that standpoint, when we talk about the physics aspect, we're talking about recognizing that that trifecta, those 3 Ps have to come into play. The problem that we run into with that is that now we're narrowing our bandwidth of being able to reach the people. So how do we want to go about this? Do we go about it with a shotgun approach, or do we go about it with a laser cherry picking approach, and we go out to specifics? And I think those are the dynamics we always fight with, especially when we even talk about the way Huey saw things and the way Kwame Ture saw things in terms of all African people. I think the dynamic, and even Fred, and then I'll let somebody else jump in, because it's like, are we trying to resonate and galvanize the oppression and the pains of all people? Because Huey kind of, I think, started feeling and resonating more so with that because he was dealing with this and got thrust into a position basically prematurely. And if you keep in mind, and I still see this to this day, on the West Coast specifically, when you talk about the folks that come to your aid, you got more white folks doing it than you got black folks. Why? Because most of us are caught up in our pains, and most of us don't have the resources to where we are willing to go out and we can go out and do and operate on that level. Whereas you have the white folks who feel like they want to find a cause, and now they may be well studied, and so they want to risk it in order to help and try to identify with the pains of black people. And so Huey come out of a situation, and all of a sudden you got all these different diversities that are willing to help out. And in terms of trying to help out, now you lose some of your focus. And then you got to keep in mind, United Slaves and the Panthers were not united, and so that cultural aspect then moved away. And so that cultural aspect then moved away, and now you got the East Coast West Coast split, and everything is moving right along where it's supposed to, according to the demise of what the government is trying to make happen. And I think over time, as Huey started sitting in the struggles of realizing how few of our people are going to just be able to absorb that we need to have a new life. We need to be revolutionary, just dropping the aspects after that as he started going back into his personal deal, his personal outlets. And when we again talking about the physics, when we don't have a positive outlet, then I'm gonna sit within my pain. And as I sit within my pain through psychology, I end up taking these drugs that I got introduced to and got basically recreationalized through some of the associations I may have had outside of the revolutionary struggle.
You know, for a moment, I forgot I had my hand up. Y'all are operating at critical mass right now. So I was like, well, let me just sit back as a youth and listen from the teachers. So I'll strive to add something that is, at least close to the value of the conversation. That's a hard one to follow up. Let's get it. So when we look at Huey P. Newton, when we see the 64-65 LCFO, we see the 66 and we see the BLA, we see that. I definitely unite with what we said, with what Big Brother Sykes said early in the show, that we have all of them to look at, and there's not too much to go on, or even what was exposed when it comes to COINTELPRO and coercion tactics. Let's highlight the strongest one. If you go to one of the last interviews of Huey P. Newton, he talks about his upbringing. He talks about his father being a preacher in a church that's also an NAACP chapter, all right, in Louisiana. Smells of Deacons of Defense, all right. He was also a member of the AAA, which was a cadre of RAM, all right. It was a cultural, well, back in the day, you could go to the Wayback Machine. It's all gone now. They playing. They would make booklets of art and poems and things that would have more cultural aspect to it. He also would be a part of a college group that was a support group and essentially would get into the processing in the Nation of Islam. He sure was. That his words, all right? So he's well educated on the Southern Black power, Black liberation theology. But what we're seeing is that there is some form of a disillusion. We must go to SNCC, where we're going to reroute and go back to RAM. But we'll go to SNCC when they took the Black Power stance in 1961. A sister who was catching hell about it from Spelman College, from Atlanta native, Ruby Doris Smith Robinson, all right? As she and others who had some type of program where they would always go back and forth from Africa to the Americas, Fannie Lou Hamer also mentioned this about it as well. And we would hear about Martin Luther King going over there meeting Nkrumah as well. So this is all before you hear of a Pan-Africanism coming later on. But the thing that we would see with SNCC, we would see once it came to the stance of Black power, Black nationalism, once we came to Black separatism where they kicked out the white liberal. And we were already hearing from Martin Luther King about the white moderate. And we were already hearing, as they were students of Malcolm, we would already hear him warn us about the white liberal, how the white liberal would use that grant money. And you know the famous speech about the Big Six and how they was at the Carlisle Hotel, and you would have the Teltonic Foundation, Rockefeller, Ford, and how they would make the march on Washington. He would brand it as the farce on Washington. The Black Panther Party, LCFO, when you look at what it's dealing with in the South, you're dealing with syndicates, you're dealing with cartels of power that are in the South, but still have businesses up north, all right? You would see this grouping of a battle in SNCC developing over this Black ideology. And that's John Hewlett coming from Birmingham, going back to Lowndes County, his home. And they picked this up. Their Black nationalism, we don't even see what we would see, traces of Black separatism, and would kind of go to an extreme form to where it's just we banging on crackers' head and talking all kind of whoop, whoop, whoop. They were just saying, you know, we're Black, the Black struggle, and we need ours. We need our power. We need our sectors. Where we are, where we're that demographic, you know, of course, the Black power thing, you know, Black power, the demographic. If it's 80%, we need to show a visual of 80% Blackness in wherever that area is. But we would still have later on, when SNCC was depleting and they had to fuse with CORE, you would have members of CORE, like that guy Bernie Sanders. They would kick out the militant voice in SNCC. They would kick out those who were aligned with H. Rap Brown. You would have, what's her name? Secretary of State, First Lady, Hillary Clinton, talking about how she met Martin. She would say how she did this march, how they were there at this thing. But what she was a part of was funded by Rockefellers. So when we see this peace and freedom movement coming around, you know, real snake-like, a lot of S's, and they thought it was dollar signs, but it wasn't no dollar sign. Them dollar signs came with something else. And we would see a counterculture also develop from the white liberal, you know, and they would try to mix that in and make it seem like they were an ally. But we would see the white liberal would, as he would do all this random shit that really fucked us up, you know, they going around blowing up buildings and doing random shit with no political objective behind it, just to do something and say they did it. They would go on and still go to be accountants, be professors, be all kind of other things you would hear about. We would get on the back burner. You know, what I'm getting at is the split that we would see in '68 with Kwame Ture. I wholeheartedly believe, again, a guy that created or the guy that helped create this organization with the likes of Ella Baker, and it's a continuation from the Mississippi Democratic Freedom Organization. After that New Deal, which wasn't a New Deal at all. We got a bump package just to say they did something. This would fail us. And it came on to Alabama, the LCFO. Even then, you're seeing an Albany movement in Southwest Georgia happen. This down here, what was going on is affecting a business cartel, affecting big business. You hear Bill Clinton saying it over John Lewis' body. We thank you for helping it. Without you, we wouldn't have got that Democratic Party because Stokely Carmichael's philosophy was beating us. So what we essentially see to happen in the 1966 version of the Panther is that they would throw out the Revolutionary Action Movement. They would still carry on traits of the Deacons of Defense, but they would throw out all of the culturalism. We can blame it on the U.S., but if your thing coming from Ohio and it's coming from Pennsylvania with dying freedom, how in the world do you lose that? And we know, and we feel, well, I feel, I'm saying we, it's more than one, me, myself, and I feel from what we're seeing is that there was a slight adjustments to shake it up. Even, you got to look at that lawyer that Huey had. He damn near became a member of the CC. The way he would guide them and tell them how, you know, you kind of need to do this for the support. And even then, as we see Huey, man, that was locked up for a while, and we would see how the party would move. Where was Huey for all that? So there had to be more than what meets the eye guiding the ideology, guiding the methodology that the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was carrying on. And then later, when we look at Mao and Marxist-Leninists, and we know they were trying to get the best parts of what they read, but it confused the people. When you have a people that are not all the way illiterate, and you're telling them this and is that, they will rely on that leader, especially now when you're basically building a personality code. And when you mix in a Maoist concept with what we're doing here, and you make a minister of defense who was really, I mean, he was a minister, MOI, really, he was an MOJ at one point, and damn, if somebody looks up now, they would think that Huey was the chairman. But when we seen this blow up and they made him, they made him Jesus. But the brother was not, he was not groomed, especially coming out of jail. Let this man rest. He was not groomed to be that. They cut the leader out in 68. They cut the SNCC apparatus out in 68. And the SNCC was forever during that time, as they were supporting and aiding, being the internal infrastructure to guide it, you know, Kwame Ture being a prime minister, Kathleen Cleaver coming from the New York SNCC chapter. And that's why you would kind of hear Elridge Cleaver having something closer to Kwame than a Bobby, than a Huey, and whoever else wanted to add their little spin to the spiel. But what I truly believe is that it was knowing everything that we know now. There was somebody planning this. There was somebody purposely messing this up. And especially when you have Hollywood money, you know, it gets a little wild. And then the Black Panther, as you've seen, the militants in the 70s in these blaxploitation films, they were made to look like extreme, like they went crazy or something. You know what I'm saying? When you look at them in the movie, or if you look at a South Central, the militant that's in jail, when you look at there's plenty of movies, even the movie that they made about the BLA, when they tried to, you know, it was a dramatization, we will see that they made this to where they try to make us look like an intelligent, well, like, what was that I said? Is he a student? Crazy. What was mad scientist? What was the original? Was he
genius of Madman?
Right. They made every militant during those movies a madman. You would even see Michael J. White in his Black Dynamite movie even reoccur that theme. No disrespect to the brother, but saying he got it from the blaxploitations, where they had the militants right on, black militants, you know, all of this weird. It just didn't go well. But then in history, when you look at it, they used the Black Panther Party of self-defense to wipe out the Black Panther Party LCFO. They used that to wipe out RAM. They used that to wipe away the BLA and make them look like a crazy and psycho-intelligent, sociopath type cult. You know, so that's the spin that I just got to add on the spiel.
I'm trying to give everybody a chance to speak.
Was I weak in what I said?
No,
man, that's why we was listening.
Actually, you gave me something to think on. You know, when you know the perspective of it being and it's not anything that we haven't what can I say, reflected on before. I mean, because if you look at the party and you look at the bylaws, the original bylaws, and they had rules against drug use. But I think that we have to look at this thing, and you can never, I think it was Yanga said it a few minutes ago, that we got to understand that this devil is real. You know, that's very important to understand. You have to understand that this devil is real. George Jackson in Blood in My Eye, he essentially talked about how when you look at our movement, you have all of these leaders saying that they know the nature of our enemy. They said, you heard Malcolm said, you heard Huey said, you heard Fred Hampton said, they said that they know the nature of the enemy. He said, but they was all too easy to be killed. He said they was all too easy to be taken out or removed or made ineffective. Because you don't always have to kill the person. Sometimes, and Huey said this, he said that the purpose of every revolutionary, people think that a revolutionary's job is to bring about revolution. Revolutionaries do not bring revolution. The people bring revolution. The revolutionary's job is to teach the people the process of revolution. That's the revolutionary's job. And that's kind of like in the story that he talked about, the foolish man with the spoon trying to move the mountain. What that foolish man did to revolutionary, he taught the people the process of revolution. But so one of the best things that you can do is not necessarily kill a revolutionary because you make them a martyr. So one of the best things that you could do to a revolutionary is to make them ineffective. Because another thing that Huey said was that when you understand that the number one goal of any revolutionary is to raise the conscience of the people, then you have to understand that every action you take has to be a revolutionary act. And if it is not a revolutionary act, then it is a I forgot the word. He said it's a counter-revolutionary act. If it's not a revolutionary act, it's a counter-revolutionary act. And understand this. He said that it could be the right thing to do. It could be a brave statement of courage. But if it does not raise the consciousness of the people, it's counter-revolutionary. So we're dealing with an enemy that know how to take our steps and use our steps against us. A perfect example, when we went to Jasper, one of the number one questions that I had to field everywhere I went, and I think everybody on this panel know that I spent 17 calendar years on vacation. And while I was down there, every unit I hit, I was questioned because I was the first Panther that they had ever seen that came from the world in real life. I was the first one. And they would always ask me, why did y'all march in Jasper with no bullets in your guns? And I asked them, I said, do you really believe that Black Panthers would march through a city with no bullets in their guns? Do you really believe that? But the people, the media told them that, so it had to be true.
You lied on us the last time and said that our guns were not loaded. We'll let you know they're loaded today.
And they believed it. And they questioned me that they asked that question on every single unit that I went to. And no disrespect intended, but I had to keep it 100. And what made them really feel that it was true is because the Nation of Islam reported that in the Final Call newspaper. And that just put the seal on it, because the Nation of Islam is considered one of the foremost authorities on blackness in America. When you think of anybody, a lot of time when they even see a lot of them brothers down there in prison, when they see you start talking black, they automatically say, you must be a Muslim. You must be Nation of Islam. That's the first thing they think. They don't understand neither the idea of black nationalists, Pan-Africanness. They don't understand any of those ideas. When they hear blackness, the image is that suit and bow tie. That's the first image that comes up. So they read it in the Final Call. Some of them, in prison, what they'll do is they'll cut clippings from newspapers and they keep them and they put them in photo. So they was literally able to pull. It was brothers. One of them that I sent to Brother War, a brother named Solo. I sent him to Brother War. This brother came to me with photo albums. He pulled a photo album. He was showing me Jasper. Look, that's y'all in Jasper. And look, that's y'all here, and that's y'all. And here's the Final Call paper where I read y'all didn't have no bullets. Explain this to me. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that we had to feel. But I said that and I made that point because we have to be, you as a revolutionary, you have to understand that every action you take, when you truly understand the nature of this enemy, that enemy can take that action and then turn it against the people. And I kind of think that that's something that happened to Huey. I'm going to read this passage I told you I was looking for, but I didn't want to kill dead space. I'm going to read this right quick. And maybe it might touch some on E. I might have to attack E to get E to say something. But this is what I was telling y'all about when I was talking about what I read from David Hilliard. He said, one night toward the end, Huey came to my house banging on the door. Let me in, let me in. Who is it? It's me, let me in. Huey was running, and he had only one shoe on. What are you running from? The cops are after me. My mind warped. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. Huey Newton running from the cops? The police are chasing me. Let me in. They're after me. I felt dishonored and disgraced. Huey Newton running from the cops? They're chasing him. He's on drugs. He's hiding. My own personal drug addiction, living on the streets with a total loss of self-respect, with no work, with no place else to go. By reaching bottom, I finally made it to a drug program. And by the grace of God, I lived, and I'm here to tell the story. That's what saved my life. Seeing Huey in that condition. It's one thing to see, and when we look at it, and I can remember on film, I can remember some of the scenes of seeing a stand-up black man was those scenes of Huey in the Panther movie. Or you see those scenes of Malcolm doing this in the X movie. You see that, and as a youth, those are older movies. So as a youth, you see those movies, and you like, man, them dudes was stiff. As the youngsters say now, them dudes stood on business. As the youngsters say now, they stood on business. So to see that or to be around that, and then see them running to the door with no shoe on, you have to be disgraced. And that touched me as I was reading this book. Anybody else got anything they want to come in? But that's a nice that's a different idea to look at it, because I've always said that I truly believed, and I don't like dealing with conspiracy theory, and the reason for that, it's not that conspiracy theory doesn't have its place, but I wrote in a essay I wrote called "The Science of Building," and when I was teaching the brothers how to teach and build down there on vacation, and I was teaching them certain principles, and one of the principles I said, never teach conspiracy theory. Never teach it. And the reason for it is, who was that said this a few minutes ago? I think that was it Nehemiah that said it? But the reason I tell them that, because they have taken the image of the revolutionary and they make us look like nuts.
It's racial.
Well, expand.
I bet. Now, check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? It knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table. Now, why is that?
I don't know, but I'm sure you tell me, my brother.
Sure, you're right. Look, it's because of the white man's fear of the sexual potency of black balls.
Now, that one was kind of interesting. That was interesting.
You see, what was...
I see where you're going, and the pool table is the earth. That's why it's green.
Oh, shit. See, your shit is coming out now.
And the world, they used to think it was flat.
Screw him.
Hey, when you do the Oprah Winfrey show, I'm gonna be front row.
It's not about jokes. Me and him are here. It's not about...
That one was kind of deep. You went to the bottom of the ocean on that. Yeah, but losers get the beer, so...
Well, I'm gonna get the beer, but see how our thing is here?
Oh, yes, we're on the same wavelength.
There it is.
We're the same cat.
Get him there.
Okay, I get it. I'm gonna work on him.
All right.
Yo, man, he's getting worse. We got to find him a woman quick.
And I don't go against that idea that that's the symbolism of that, but they quickly make us look like we're insane in the movies. So I used to teach the brothers, don't teach conspiracy theory, because if you cannot prove it, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you cannot prove it, they've already inoculated the people against us as we're crazy. Either like we're crazy, or like this one dude in our comments said, Brother E need to get a job. They either think we're crazy, or they think we're just broke and doing bad and we're angry, and so we're trying to redirect our anger onto somebody else. That's the overall ideas that they done placed on revolutionary people.
It's what they call, I believe, what they call psychological profile for so-called Black identity extremists. That's right there. You said it. True so thank you for that, family. Just want to say thank you for that, because what I like about being on Panther 48, y'all don't just sketch or do commentary. Y'all develop the idea and go into it and pull the surface back and dig down into it. I really appreciate that, because that's the only way we could get to this, man. This is not superficial stuff that we're dealing with. You know, if so, you get a superficial understanding. But what I wanted to stack on it was something that my wife and the family has shared with me, and it's something that comes from the East African culture. It's the concept called temahare. I think I'm pronouncing it right. That's from Tigrinya, and tema comes from the word temiskin, which means to be grateful or thankful, and hare is the teacher. So when they say temahare is the student who is grateful for their teacher and for the sacrifice that their teacher has made. You know what I mean? And you can tell a lot about a student, about how they relate to their teacher. You know, this person who's taking out time to teach them and share with them. You know what I mean? You see, you can learn a lot about a student's character by how they relate to their teacher. Now, some people, they'll make you think they had no teachers and they will not relate. Malcolm X always said, what? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us blah, 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 right? You know what I mean? Even Minister Farrakhan does that. Kwame Ture, he would reference several different types of people. You know what I mean? Huey didn't do that much. If he did, it was Trotsky, or it was Marx, or it was Lenin. You know what I mean? But he didn't know these people. So the question becomes, who was his teacher? And did something happen between the person he was being taught by to where he could not be that grateful student? And if he's not going to be a grateful student, being grateful for the teacher, then the people whom he teaches will not be grateful to him. And the cycle begins again. So once again, the concept is called temahare, you know? So, you know, and I always wanted to be a good student, not criticizing my teachers, man, just looking at them for what they was trying to relate to me and not trying to pick them apart. because I might end up in the same pit as him, looking too hard at him, you know what I mean? And not examining myself. So I always had to step back a couple times and make sure I'm doing that timahade and letting my teachers who taught me, the ones that's still around, know, hey man, yeah, man, you went through. One of my teachers, y'all, I'm gonna just share this with you, is Brother James Best, okay? Now y'all might know him in a certain capacity. In Seattle, he did a lot for Black people, irregardless of what happened between him and Dr. Khaled. And most people do not know what really happened. You know what I mean? So, anybody who's from here is going to be grateful for what that brother did because nobody else did it but him. And at one time, him and Dr. Khaled was like this. You know what I mean? But if I was not a grateful student, I could have came and said, oh man, you did such and such and blah, 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 blah. And then one day, what? Because I'm not really being a good student on the positive and the negative that I see him go through, I end up doing what? The same thing, right? So, want to learn, we want to definitely draw up these mistakes. I wouldn't even say mistakes, from just the trials and tribulations, and draw them up to where we can learn from them. And then, like we said in the first broadcast, to make a stronger, more sustainable party, that can get stretched, that can get bent, that can get pushed, and the wind can blow on and shit. Earthquakes could come, but it's still standing because they have understanding.
True indeed. I'm gonna ask this because we finna get ready to bring it to a close, and I'm gonna give everybody a chance to speak on it. Since we talked about Huey P. Newton today, I guess I got three basic questions. Questions. One, and I'm gonna take it around in the circle. Was he a genius or a madman? That's the first question. The second, what is one of what could you say? I ain't even gonna ask for the greatest. Just give me one contribution that you feel like Huey gave to the Black Panther Party, to the Panther culture as a whole. And the third, what cautionary tale or lesson can we take away from Huey that we could utilize as well? Those three things are the questions I'm asking as we get ready to close out. And I'm gonna give y'all time to think about that because I didn't prepare y'all for that by saying this to the listening audience. If you made it this far, we're gonna do this same thing at some point on Dr. Khalid Abdul-Muhammad, because Dr. Khalid Abdul-Muhammad has become a figure in the Panther culture, and we want to kind of dig into Dr. Khalid a little bit to see, was he a genius or was he a madman? What did he add or what did he take away from the Panther Party as a whole? We want to build on that, brother. But was Huey P. Newton a genius or a madman? What value did he add to the party, and what cautionary tale can we take away from Huey? Brother Magnet, we're gonna start with you because you're the first one to my right, and I'm gonna take it clockwise.
Okay, let me make sure I got the question. What did he add to the party? Was he a madman or was he a genius? And then what was the other one?
What cautionary tale can we take away from him?
Okay,
what lesson?
cautionary
What?
tale
Yes.
take away.
Yes.
I'm gonna start out. I thought about it when you were saying, I was processing it. And I have to say he was 60% madman and 40% genius. And the reason why I say that is because his madman ended up destroying a lot of his genius. So it's tipped, the scale is tipped. Okay, but the reason why I say he's genius, and the thing I took most from him as far as revolutionary culture, before I was about 20 years old, I knew most of the Bill of Rights, and I knew just the ups and downs in the case law on a lot of the Bill of Rights and how to go into court and work my way out, even if I was in the wrong. Now, you see what I'm saying? Because what we learned was the loopholes in the law, and it turn you into a little bit of a slick nigga when you're young and you're not wise with it. So I did like that. I was able to get out of a lot of stuff, not pleading guilty. The Fifth Amendment, First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the right against illegal search and seizure. They can't go on your person. They can't search your car. They can't open your trunk. They can't go in your glove department. They taught us all this by the time we was well. So that was the contribution. And then I'm going to say, just the drawbacks once again, I wish he would have embraced revolutionary culture more, that reformist part that made Elijah a better man, that made Malcolm a better man, that even made Martin Luther King a better man, because Martin Luther King had some pimp bones and slickness in his body too. But because he had the church there as a buffer, all that slick didn't come out. It came out in the FBI files, you know what I mean? But you didn't see it, you know what I mean? So that refinement, if he would have embraced that, I think he would have did just fine, you know, but somebody pushed him, I think purposely pushed him away from that because they wanted to make him into what I call the Huey psyop. Yep, and that's, yep.
Brother Nehemiah, same question on you.
Genius or a madman? I'm not one to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Nor am I one to cut the baby in half just to appease two sides. But the brother did. I'm gonna talk about the good part. You know, talk about not what they say. Criticize the criticism. The brother had some shortcomings, but genius, a madman. He was a madman genius. Literally. And with his dedication, many of us today wouldn't be here. If it just stayed in the South and whoop-de-whoop, it probably would have became some type of secret fraternal order that, you know, only very few knew, you know, and when we seen them aiding the structure of the 10-point platform, although we give credence to UNIA and they give credence to NOY, we must talk about the Revolutionary Action Movement's 14-point program. So it still breathes inside of that 10 points. And as long as we have that 10 points, we have a reference to look at in our community areas that still need fortifying, that still was not some, we only had some, so we need to build it. So we must highlight that good and see that good left a strong impression throughout history to where brother been gone for like 35, 37 years, 89, and we still talking about big bro. So yeah, his contributions, we can't take that away. If you take away his contributions, you have to take away a lot of people that just joined just on the Free Huey campaign. And another thing that I'll say that, what was it? I kind of already hinted at it, what he put in. When we see him and Brother Bobby, Big Bobby, what they put down, they still kept RAM as the main tenets in that 10-point program. So I thank Bobby Seale, Chairman Bobby, and I thank the Minister of Defense, who would later call himself the Supreme Commander, Huey P. Newton. I thank them both for still keeping RAM in there. Although only if you squint your eyes, you can see it. And I think right now that's what many people have to do in this movement. We got to look hard and we have to stay studious, just like Bobby and Huey was studious.
I have no official position. You know, I'm not really with the personality aspect of it. It doesn't matter to me how he died, drug overdose, shot in the street, he died. In the time between when he was born and when he died, he did some shit. And that's what's most significant for me. You ever notice how much white people really like superheroes?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like X-Men and Marvel, they all about that superhero life. So I'm thinking and I'm wondering, if you look at their religion, there ain't no superheroes in their religion. And this goes for Islam as well. But everything, like, you know, God is in the idea of God is so pristine and so perfect that it loses its appeal because it's not relatable. But your superheroes are relatable. Wolverine, he trying to do the right thing, but he got some shit going on. Batman at conflict with being a straight up good guy and turn him into the cops, or just gunning them down in the street like he really want to. There's that conflict that makes it relatable, as opposed to the prophet or Jesus or anybody else who's perfect, and you know you'll never get there. You know, seeing in African spiritual concepts, we ain't had that problem. We incorporated the shadow into our reality, and it's manifest through our so-called gods, which African people have also always been monotheistic. We've never had multiple gods. It's always been one God. Don't believe the hype. But because we don't embrace, well, because we do embrace that shadow, a whole lot of the social ills that are present here in the church, in the mosque, in the whatever, those negative traits that we suppressed start to come out. I mean, you know what I mean? In the African spiritual system, we don't have that problem because we deal with them up front, and they're a part of the God. God is good, God is bad, God is the noble God, God is the trickster. It's all one and the same. And so I think if we're going to talk about somebody like Huey, we have to accept both of them as equally good. You know, if we want to put it in the context of good and bad. The reality of it is, Huey and them, and that's what I used to always say to kind of specify which Black Panther group I'm talking about in the past, because, you know, y'all know Huey and them wasn't the first Panthers. So specifically Huey and them fell short the same way the nation falls short, the same way the church falls short. And Brother Magnetic said it a while ago, there's a reform element, like within the nation. They reformed Malcolm and a bunch of others, which is great. But reform is not revolution. So it's not a revolutionary culture. In fact, I don't think we really understand what a revolutionary culture is. The nation wasn't a revolutionary culture. Huey and them wasn't necessarily a revolutionary culture because it was all reactionary. Revolution is a reaction. Still, revolution involves changing from to. Subconsciously, they were living out with the Feed the Children programs, with the Getting People to the Doctor programs, which all of those things, those are African concepts, but because we don't understand what culture is, we didn't realize that that was life. That was it. That's what we were working for. So that shortcoming of not realizing they were doing the actual culture, they just weren't wearing a dashiki. They were taking part in African culture, but they weren't speaking an African language. So we still get caught up in both the personality, we get caught up in the Messiah complex of, again, whether it's the nation or the church or whomever, particularly when we talk about, when we don't understand the difference between, maybe that's the new 3 R's for you there, war, reform, rebellion, and revolution, and the differences in them. You know, if the nation, if the first step toward, or if the first step toward wisdom is fear, it says something like that in the Bible. The beginning of wisdom is fear, but that fear is a step. That fear is a beginning. If you're 50 years old, been in the nation, and you're still a God-fearing person, or you're in the church and you're still a God-fearing person, you're still at step 1. So we haven't learned to see that as a process. Huey was a process. Malcolm was a process. Malcolm was no more disciplined before he went into the nation than when he came out. What was different was that his purpose had changed. You can't be a hustler in the streets of New York and not have some level of discipline. It's just not going to happen. So the nation reformed it, gave him a purpose, and pointed him in a particular direction. Huey may not have had that, but Huey was still a process, a part of the process. His life was a part of the process. And so I think his contribution was no more or less than anybody else's contribution. Was he a madman? Was he a genius? Yeah, probably. But we have to take him in totality and appreciate him in totality. I appreciate the way he went out just as the way I appreciate the way he came in. And so I think that, again, I'm not really and that's kind of why I haven't said much, because we keep, really conversations revolving around this dude. And he was just a dude. Malcolm was just a dude. These were just cats that decided or had a purpose thrust upon them and went in a particular direction. And I think that's what ultimately all of us are in the same boat. So again, I really don't have an opinion on whether he was a madman or a genius. That's all a matter of perspective and a never-ending conversation. But I think certainly what he missed out on, and what Huey and them during that time missed out on, was the cultural aspect. They were feeding the children, not realizing that's what the fuck African people do. That's what freedom is. But their perspective, the context was still rebellious. They were still rebelling. They had nothing to replace it with. Revolution involves moving from something to something. Like Zach said earlier, These cats were moving away from something, but they had no idea where they were going. They did some of the stuff where they were going. They didn't realize it because they didn't have that cultural aspect still in part. And you can apply that to pretty much any or most of the organizations that we talk about, is not having that element or misunderstanding the element and saying that, you know, this belief system is this or that or whatever, and we really don't understand how all of it fits together.
Yeah.
I think you gave you say you don't have an opinion, but you gave a perfect expression of what it was I was asking for. Yang, it's on you. Let me tell you the question, because I think you fell off at the time.
Yeah, I fell off.
The question is, and I don't win. I'm going in a circle. The question is, one, was Huey P. Newton a genius, or was he a madman? Two, what did Huey P. Newton contribute to the movement and to the Panther Party? And three, what cautionary tale can we take away from Huey's life and death?
Man, awesome questions. One, was he a genius and a madman? You know, I echo Sykes' sentiment about, you know, possibly so, possibly both. When I study people, some of people whom I study their movements and revolution, you find just a touch of a hint of insanity. They say fortune favors the bold. It's always that hint of insanity or madness that even makes one think that the norm can be challenged. They would call that mad, you know. So yeah, both of them go in. And this goes into what I think he contributed to history too, and why I do think that this is a great conversation and a great character to center it around. We know that in revolutionary history, periods are defined by phenomena.
You must be having technical difficulties. We'll come back to the brother if he come back on. Brother War, same question.
All right. Well, I would first say, and Yanga basically was going where I would have went with it. When I think of the concept of a genius, I think of genius and a madman as being one and the same, because typically, in order to do anything revolutionary or to go against the norm, the grain of the norm, you have to be reckless in some sense. You have to take a chance. You have to do things that other people are going to say are undoable. I think is genius in being able to see and have a vision of your own, to be able to operate in a position where everybody feels like everything that has been done or everything that is being done is very predictable, and operating from a standpoint to where you're willing to jump out on the ledge and you're willing to take that chance, and you're able to dissect information and be able to, you know, go in new directions with it, is a genius. And at the same time, to me, that is a madman's arena. I think when we talk about that, though, we have to look at it again. What are we talking about, physically, mentally, or spiritually? So I think in aspects of that also, we realize that some people, or a lot of times when we think about a genius, it may be somebody that is very influent in one area of science, or balanced in one area of their life, but then the other areas of their life may be totally crazy and off balance and dysfunctional. So oftentimes the brain works that way. So to me, I say he's one in the same. But at the same time, that's what I did love about him. But I will also say, in saying that, when you look at the way he went out, that just goes back to me in the aspect of psychological awareness and having a reflective correctiveness to deal with all that we do. And we must have a positive outlet when we whenever we are operating in this level of combat. When you realize that you're at war and you operate like a warrior, you have to make sure you balance yourself. You have to make sure you give credence to harmony. And giving credence to harmony is realizing that there's going to be times where I have to heal myself. There's going to be times where I have to step back and make sure that my head is in the right space so that I can have all of me in a positive, productive manner to give to the people. So I have to take care of me. If I don't take care of me, how can I take care of the people? If I don't love me properly, how can I love the people properly? And I think what happened to Huey is Huey needed that group dynamic to stay in that realm. Otherwise, he was allowed too much time to go into his own personal demons and deal with those demons and allow those demons to take the forefront. And I've even seen situations like that where we've had other members in our scope to operate the same way, to where cats will be very reckless and destructive with their own personal life, but you put them in charge of other people's lives. All of a sudden, they correct their behavior and correct their mannerism simply because they know they have to. Sometimes people operate under pressure, and that type of pressure the best. But if you leave them with idle time, they may be self-destructive because they don't necessarily have the right things or have the right point of view in terms of operating on their personal attributes without it being in a situation where they have to help the people. So I kind of feel like Huey was trapped and caught up in that element. But I would say when I think about the greatest thing he gave was the continual development of dialectical materialism and the transformation in thought with intercommunalism and its reality. By identifying with the fundamental internal contradictions in all things, Huey was real powerful when it came to that. And so to me, that is an ever evolving concept that we talk about when we talk about revolution, period. I think what he added and what he gave us had a lot to do with just, again, where I felt like he was heavy on was the philosophy. When we talk about that, we talk about going into the areas of thinking and going into areas of observance that oftentimes people avoid or evade or just don't think about. Huey was a genius in being able to do just that. And I think that is a left unfinished product that Huey had on the table that really needs some looking into in terms of the current generation in regards to, okay, where is this going? What is it that made him such a genius, and why did he go mad in trying to be able to get this message and get this level of consciousness to the people? I think we have yet as a people, and even within, I would say, even within the Panther movement, I think we have yet to be able to internalize what Huey really was in terms of his power in that element, in that character of thought. And I'm in with that.
Well, I'm gonna say my part, and then we're gonna bring this thing to a close. It's horrible because all of y'all pretty much said what I was gonna say about him being both. Because you in Yango, I think he was trying to express this, that his genius and the expression of it came from the fact that he was mad. And I'm not saying he was lunatic, but sometimes you got to know, sometimes you need not to know what you can't do. Because if you say, man, I can't do, we know this is not possible, you won't even try. And I don't think Huey believed that a lot of those things that he did was impossible. He believed in the ideals. He believed that they could be done, so he tried them. And to many, those things looked insane. They looked crazy. And like that's where he came over with the idea of revolutionary suicide, because they was in the popular media of his day, they were saying that the Black Panther Party was suicidal. So he defined it as revolutionary suicide and reactionary suicide. So you have to have certain levels of insanity in order to make certain moves that to the overall society may look crazy. Second, one of the there's a lot of things that I personally got from Huey, and many of the things that I studied from Huey helped me deal with that sentence. So there's a lot of I believe, as Brother Nehemiah said, that there's no way that we can cancel the brother or not see who he was throughout history. The way he died takes some of his status away to the average person, because we live in a society where we have this Messiah complex, and we want to put them on this superhero level and not understand the limitation that they had. And Brother Magnetic said some things that I actually never really, and I can't believe I didn't, because I'm analytical, never really thought about. And it's the fact that he actually did not have that mentor to guide his development. He was building on his own development. He didn't have that big brother who had more wisdom than he had to give him guidance and walk him through it. Huey had to be the big brother at a time that he was trying to learn how to do it. And that's something I've never really even given that any real thought. And that kind of is what hurt him, I believe, because you need that. I mean, even I in my revolutionary development, and many times I had big brothers, brother E, brother War. I had these brothers to give me guidance. And then, boom, that was snatched away from me. And I was put in a position where I was looking for the big brother when I went down there. Be honest, when I went down there, I was looking for my, the brother that slid up next to Malcolm and started building with Malcolm. The brother that slid up next to OG Bobby Johnson and started building with OG Bobby. I didn't have that. It wasn't there. So I said, God, I got to become the big brother, and I didn't think I was ready to be the big brother. And by having to be the big brother, I started studying the big brothers, and I've realized that okay, I got what it takes to be the big brother. I got what it takes, and so I had to be removed from my hedges, my big brothers, and had to become the big brother. But Huey, his what he gave to the people, I think was that boldness, that courage, that strength. One of the things about Huey that touched people was he was willing. And I said this about him being a madman. They realized later because they did not have this classification at his time that Huey was also bipolar. And a lot of times you'll find bipolar people who have not been diagnosed with it self-medicate. You'll find I see a lot of these brothers myself. I got people very close to me who needs to stay high because they're dealing with something here, and being high helps them to handle it. Instead of going and getting diagnosed and figuring out what's going on and what's wrong, they just stay high, and it makes them feel better. And I think that that's a situation that Huey himself went through and had to deal with. When I study
Can I,
our,
can I
when I
add something
study,
on family? I don't
go
want to
ahead.
cut your wisdom, but just that part that you said, you talking about the insanity part and the bipolar part. I can honestly say that at a certain point, being in, suing the police, suing the city, having the police at your house, having to fight with the police in the streets, and seeing my uncle, get killed by the police on his mama's front doorstep. I wasn't there, but I lost my mind, bro. But it wasn't like I totally lost it to where I couldn't find my way back. But what I figured out was that because I started out in Panther school, then I went to public school, I was trying to reconcile these two worlds that were not reconcilable. So I had to get rid of one. So I always say I lost my mind, the mind they gave me, but I gained my soul because I gained the oneness of blackness. You know what I mean? And that was the greatest mind. And I gave away the other mind because that shit was driving me insane, trying to reconcile these things I had learned in the public school system that were not reconcilable. Fred Hampton say you have reasons that don't reason.
Yeah.
Intelligence that's not intelligent, and
Yeah.
so forth. You know what I mean? I had too many of those, but they taught me that was education. So I was holding on to that. And then when I just let go of that and said, ooh, I'm going to just sink into the oneness of my soul, that's when my sanity, my real sanity that nobody could take away came back. And I didn't mean to cut the wisdom, but I just wanted to put that in there. That's what drove me insane to that point of revolutionary insanity, which I'm sure we all have been there. Might be still dealing with some.
One of my greatest things that I'm gonna say that I think Huey left, and I think many of them used it. I think Fred used it more because he always talked about it. If you look at things Fred said or wrote, he always went back to this. And I found this to be extremely important. I use this a lot. But because Huey was analytical, that's where he was good at. Huey wasn't a speaker. Huey was not a speaker. He couldn't speak and motivate people, but he was a teacher. He was an analyzer. And one of the things that Huey said that I loved and that I used, and I saw that it worked. He said, you got to understand that people learn through observation, participation, and through reading. Those are the three ways people learn. He said, but once you understand that the Black community is not a reading community, we have been forced off reading. They taught us that reading could lead to our death. So, and you heard the popular saying, if you want to hide anything from a Black man, put it in a book. So the people don't read, so they're not going to read your read material. He says, so you got to get them correct action to observe and then eventually to participate in. And so if you go out and you get them the correct action to observe and the people respect that action, he said that nobody remember who threw the first Molotov cocktail, but somebody respected the action, and so they copied it and they started throwing the Molotov cocktail. He says, so once you get a people correct action to observe, they will see your action and they will say, man, they on point. Then they'll want to participate in the action. Then once you get them participating, you got to say to properly participate, brother, you have to read this. Then you can get them your read material and get them to study and learn the processes of participating in action. So you learn that the people learn through observation and participation. When he gave me that, I used I sit down and I say, what can I get the people to observe and then eventually participate in? So we started a training group. We called it God Body. We called it the GBA, God Body Army. That was the term that we put on it. And all of the brothers, we would hit the rec yard, and it might have started out probably with 3 to 5 brothers. And toward the end, when I was getting ready to leave that vacation period, toward the end, you had 20 to 30 brothers on one side of the farm meeting at the fence to meet another 20 to 30 brothers on the other side of the farm in order to train and work out together. You had brothers when they messed up on their workout, and I said, "Come on, brother, give me a lap. Make sure you stop and give me 10 push-ups every time you see concrete." And the brother take off running, and he do what was told. You had the Mexican brothers watching this, they looking at us, and they said, "I remember this. I remember because it was impressive." The Mexican brother said, "Man, man, you see that? He followed the order, and he didn't even argue about it." And they looking at the brother running, doing the lap, giving 10 push-ups every time he see concrete. But we gave them correct activity to observe, and then more and more people wanted to participate in it. And even those that didn't come and be a part of what we was doing, they created their own workout groups. And I remember one of the brothers asking me, saying, "Man, look at them. They over there copying off us, trying to do what we doing." And I told the brother, I say, "That's the plan. I don't want everybody to be with us. They ain't got to be with us. All they got to do is copy the activity. When they copy the activity, they multiplying us, whether or not they have the same name that we have or not." And that's that observation and participation. And I learned it from this book. I learned it from Huey saying that the people learn through observation. This is my book that I was reading, studying, and building on down there. And you can see this even got my name. You can't really see it. My name, label, and my inmate number on in the book. This is the exact same book that I was building on with down there. And that's what I got from Huey. And I think y'all all know the cautionary tale. I still believe, and this is one of the reasons, and E&M can tell you, before I went on vacation, I talked bad about Huey. I wasn't trying to hear it. I'm a street dude, so I didn't like dope fiends. I wasn't trying to hear it. Huey P. Newton died addicted to drugs and alcoholic. I'm not trying to hear it. And I counseled the brother. And I guess with my maturity, I had to realize and learn that I can't counsel the brother. I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I can't cut him in half because I want a perfect, what I'm saying, a person to listen to. I can't do that. I can't do that because if I did that, I'd have to do that to just about all of our teachers because all of them on some level fell short. The only one that I couldn't find in my studies that fell short after his change was Malcolm X. He's the only one I can't find as far as his character, as far as how he operated. There was something that Malcolm did that I didn't necessarily agree with, but as far as his character and the character that he molded himself into, that he became, I don't see him sliding from that. I don't see any hypocrisy in him. I don't see it that you can find in many of our other teachers. But that's my take on it. And we're getting ready to close this out. Anybody got anything to say before we shut it down? We're 25 minutes over time. Anybody?
Well, the last piece I wanted to throw in, I wanted to encourage everybody just so we can get a better understanding of the environment that he was within, because that helped you to understand how a person developed, to study memorandum number 46, National Security Council, written by Zygmunt Brzezinski. You can look it up. And COINTELPRO, the points of COINTELPRO, specifically number 2, so that we can get an idea of what other type of forces was moving, the hidden hand that was at work during this time. And that helped me tremendously. And I want to thank y'all again for letting me be in here with you to build with the builders, man, because these are things whether y'all know it or not, the layers y'all stacking on and laying on, these are things that I go back and me and Brother Nehemiah, we talk about this for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, So I look forward to this substance because it's not what you're talking about. Sometimes it's who's talking about it and what they done went through and how much, they can add to it, their perspective. Sometimes it's a perspective that you can only get from you guys, man, the Panther 48. I don't give a fuck what nobody say. So once again, I thank you, man, for inviting me into the house of Bastet for the build, man.
We appreciate you, brother. We definitely appreciate you, and we appreciate you for coming on. We appreciate you, brother Nehemiah, and Chairman Yanga dropped out, but we definitely appreciate brother Chairman Yanga as well. And with that, this was the Panther 48. I think this was the dynamic conversation. Peace and power.